Mä oon tosiaan kirjastonhoitaja Juhani Koivis täältä Metson musiikkiosastolta. Meillä on täällä tänään niin vieraana oli äsken Pelle Miljoona, nyt on Steve Ignorant, annetaan hänelle aplodit. Mä puhun tonne striimiin, te voitte puhua minne te haluatte. Tänään tämän jälkeen ovet aukeaa 7, että kun tän on kuunnellut ja lähtee suuntaan tai hyppää ratikkaa klubille, siellä esiintyy Pelle Miljoona, Pispala Punks ja Crass erikoiskokoonpanolla. Molemmat soittaa, kun täällä on tämä näyttely, tämän takia ne soittaa Tampereen HC 82-85 kultaiset nuoruusvuodet, niin sen takia niin kun Crass ja Pelle soittaa sen ajan musiikkia. No ei ne nyt ihan sen takia soita, meidän piti tehdä tämä Steve Ignorantin haastattelu ennen koronaa. Mutta hienoa, että hän on täällä ja hienoa, että teitä on näin paljon. Katsokaa näyttelyä. Se on nyt poikkeuksellista tuo ulkopuolella noin pääservit. Se tulee tähän taas. Se on koko toukokuun täällä. Mutta tämän pikemmittä puheitta mä annan, niin meillä toimii haastattelijoina Arto Hietikko Ylöjärven kirjastosta, Arja Rantanen täältä Tampereen kirjastosta. Molemmat myös tunnettuja hahmoja, tyyppejä punk-skenessä. Mutta olkaa hyvä.
Hi Steve.
Hi.
Steve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. A little bit nervous, but fine.
Yeah. How many times have you been in Finland before?
3 times. It's always been so wonderful, it becomes a blur. You know, it's the hospitality of the locals that insist you have just that one more beer. So, you know.
Because why not?
And it's Friday night, so yeah.
Yeah. Who is Steve Ignorant? Or who is Stephen Williams? Or is there a difference?
No, the reason I called myself Ignorant many years ago was because I lived with my grandparents, and they were working class people, but they were typical downtrodden working class people who always believed that the king and queen were right, people in power were right, politicians knew all the answers, so you don't make any noise, you don't make waves. And I'm sure if they ever voted, they would have voted Conservative, which is very strange. So obviously in my upbringing there was no talking about unions, trade unions or rights for workers, because it was the bosses know what's best. And that's why when I first started Crass, I was like, if anyone asked me about anything, I'll just say I'm ignorant, which I was at the time. And actually, to tell the truth, I still am, but I know a little bit better now. But yeah, so Steve Ignorant or Steve Williams is this person sitting here. If I feel angry, I'll show it. If I feel sad, I'll cry. If you need some money, I'll give it to you. If you want a hug, I'll give you a hug. You know, and if you want to give me a bit of toast, that'd be fantastic.
That's great and odd. Great and odd at the same time.
Well, yeah, what's nicer than saying, here, mate, do you want a bit of toast? Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course, why not?
Well, there you go.
Yeah, with marmalade.
Yeah, yeah, well,
Okay.
That's going too far.
In your book, The Rest is Propaganda,
Yes.
you tell us quite a lot about your youth and the days that you were at the school.
Yes.
And it came very clear that at your time in the school, the teachers were bullies and sadists. But there were exceptions also, like your Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Who made you looking the books different way that you did before that.
Yes. Yeah.
And the first book that he introduced you was Billy Liar.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we don't have it here.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But would you please tell us, because now we are in a library, it's very
Yes.
important to talk about the reading and the books, poetry and things like that also. First of all, do you have a library card at the moment?
Do I have it? No.
Oh, you must get one. I recommend you.
Yeah. But no.
Yes.
Right, that's a deal. Okay, but no, what I tend to do is go to bookshops and buy a book or second-hand
Yeah.
shop, and I buy
Yeah.
books.
Why not? Yeah.
I've got so many.
Yeah.
Yola keeps saying, "Get rid of them." No, I can't.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah. Your treasures.
But yeah. Anyway, no, so I don't have a library card.
Yeah. So would you please tell us a bit more about the time, the era when you found books and how it infects you?
Well, school, as you said, I mean, this is going to sound like a very dramatic, black and white English film, over the top. But as you said, when I was at school, they were still, they'd still hit you with a stick.
Yeah.
For anything, if they caught you smoking, if you were swearing, if you're eating,
Yeah.
if you were caught in the toilets, they would just hit you.
Yeah.
And if you were walking on the wrong side of the corridor, it was quite normal to get hit by a teacher. So it was all really, and none of the teachers wanted to be there, but it was, well, some of them did, but a lot of the teachers there had come out of the Second World War, and the only job they could get was teaching. So now, of course, they're seeing these late 1960s, 1970s kids who don't give a fuck about the Second World War. What do we know about it? We're out for a good, we want to buy clothes and things. So they're getting all angry because, people died in Alexandria or something. So what? So it was that sort of thing. And plus the curriculum, the lessons we had, was so strict that it was all designed, because where I grew up was a huge Ford's factory. And it was all designed that at the end of when you left school, that's where you were going. If you were a girl, you would be a secretary, or be a hairdresser, or be a cook, or be a housewife. Yeah. But if you were a male, you were going to end up in a factory, on the factory floor. So that's all it was designed to do. So things to do with arts and books, it was very stifled. And it wasn't, so going back to what you said about Billy Liar, if I can talk about that for a minute, if you don't mind, was that when Mr. Stewart introduced me to that book, I thought, I'm not going to like it. Yeah. But I read it, and Billy Liar is roughly about a young man who he's just left school and he's working in a job at an undertaker's. His parents are really stifling, just like mine were. And not just me, but everybody else in England. So he creates this fantasy world called Ambrosia that he disappears into, and that's his saving. And he lies just to make his life better, and that's what the whole book is about. It's about one Saturday when it all starts off brilliant. He's got these great ideas. Right, I'll do this and I'll do that, and then I'll move to London, and it all comes. Well, I won't spoil the ending for you if you read it, but it all crashes down, and it ends up like my life did at the time. So, but for me, it was just like, that's me. Yeah. I had my own fantasy world that I moved into.
Because that's very important. When I read about the book, it really kind of the first thing that I kind of noticed, that it was the first sign you became you when you found the books.
Yes.
And that's why I wanted to take that out now. And here we have Steve's recommendations what comes to the books and films. So please take a look at them afterwards.
Do you still read a lot?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Can you recommend some books you have read lately?
At the moment.
At the moment or lately?
Well, I'm reading a Jonathan King book at the moment called Slaughterhouse Prayer. Which is very heavy. I have to really okay, I'm going to read it now. It's about veganism and animals being killed and that sort of stuff. And then the other book I have upstairs is autobiography of Miles Davis, which I'm just starting. And then I've got what's upstairs? Oh, then I've got a Tintin book which I read when I go to bed with a bit of chocolate.
Yeah. In addition to books, there is something else that has played a big role in your life: music.
Yeah.
What kind of music did you listen when you were a little kid?
Well, when I was a little kid, obviously it was what my grandparents and parents wanted to listen to. So it was fucking Perry Como and Frankie Vaughan and a programme in England that we had. I don't think you had it here, but it was called the Black and White Minstrel Show. We'd dress up in black ourselves up and down the Swanee River and all this sort of fucking awful. But then, of course, every so often we were allowed to watch. I think it wasn't Top of the Pops. It was called Ready, Steady, Go. And sometimes we were allowed to watch that, and it was new bands that came through, like Diana Ross, that kind of thing. And, of course, every now and again you'd see bands like The Who and this kind of thing. So gradually I started to listen to that. And it wasn't until... Oh, when was it? I can't remember. I mean, obviously the Beatles were around, but all those 60s bands, you know. My grandmother used to tap her knitting needles to it. Oh, that's a nice tune, isn't it? You know, she loves you, yeah, tap, tap. Yeah, and then the Who would come on, or the Rolling Stones. Oh, turn that rubbish off. So that was going on. And then, of course, must have been 1968, moving into 69. Forget what Jimmy Percy says about it started in 69. No, it didn't. Skinheads were around before that because it came out of the mod thing. Right, now I've got to make a distinction here. Back in those days, a skinhead was someone who was non-racist, had black friends, whatever, and was into music, looking sharp, looking smart, but would have a fight if you were up for it. Now, what came afterwards was what we call boneheads. So they're the blokes wearing black bomber jackets. Bald heads and, doing this all the time, like they're catching flies. Well, that's not skinhead, that's fucking rubbish. Skinhead is. So, anyway, going back to my original thing, I told you I would go diverse. But I was with a friend and we were just getting into skinhead and I was sitting in his back garden. This is in the book, you know, but, and this bloke...
Yeah, you said it changed your life.
Yeah.
To see the first skinhead.
Yeah, this guy came walking down and he had this suit on that was sort of different colours. And he had these red socks on and these shoes that had little tassels on, loafers, and he had a sort of shrub haircut with two side partings in the side. And he just floated down and I was like, fucking hell. Then he went indoors and put on this amazing music. Yeah. Al Capone's guns don't argue. Dun, 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 dun. And me and my mate looked and I went, I want to be like that. And that was the first time I thought I can have an identity. Yeah. And that's when I got into ska and reggae, which, you know, so it was that. So it was that catalyst was all to do with the look. For the first time, I don't have to wear these trousers that my mother buys me. Yeah. I can save up or I can steal or I can do anything, you know, to get this look. And that's what I wanted, you know, which is why the skinhead look has always stayed with me.
Yeah, and also you mentioned that you weren't no more than probably 13 years old at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, do you want to fight, mate?
Yeah, but you know, when you are at that age, things that happens to you, they affect your whole life if they are strong enough. Like it happens to me when I was in 1979 when I found punk rock, and I'm still on that. So, yeah, the same. Yeah. The same but different.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you also mentioned that there were some bands before, like Bay City Rollers. He was into Bay City Rollers, and we all heard that. Why? Because when you wear these clothes, all the words came to you. That's what he told us. And there were also this record mentioned, David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. We came this later because this is very meaningful record for your career.
Yeah.
But let's have a few words before that.
Yeah, well, it's very strange because I was in Belgium. Can I keep it?
No, please. Yes, please. No, please. No, thank you.
No, it's funny. I was in Belgium last year and I was talking to some people and they said, oh, you know, Steve, you talk about David Bowie a lot. To us, he's just a pop star. To you, he's something else. Yeah. And I was like, and I went, now I get it. It's, you know, obviously it's later. Yeah. The thing maybe, and of course, yeah, he was just a pop star. Yeah. But that record is what I'll always love him. I'm getting emotional now, but I'll always love him because of that record and because of Starman. Mm-hmm. He was on TV in England, and he just looked at the camera and went, "There's a Starman," and pointed, and every kid in England went, "He's pointing at me."
Yeah.
And then when he came out and said, I'm bisexual or whatever, fantastic, something else to annoy my parents, you know. But everyone got into him, and he, thanks to David Bowie, bless his soul, he made it possible for kids like me to be able to wear a bangle or a bit of makeup without getting beaten up on a set. And so yeah, it's very important. Very important. God,
Let's give a big hand to David Bowie. I'll have to tell you a secret. My first record I ever bought was David Bowie's Aldin Sane. I was 7 years old. So
fantastic. Yep. See, can't go wrong.
When you lived in Bristol, you worked as a plaster technician.
Yeah.
And you also had some thoughts about becoming an ambulance driver.
Yes. Yeah. But then I was planning on that. I was very much enjoying the job in the hospital. It was really good. But then, of course, there I was. This girl came in wearing very strange clothes at that time, and she had broken her wrist, so I had to put a plaster on it, plaster of Paris. And I said, "So what's with the clothes? Ain't you heard of punk rock?" I went, "Yeah, I've heard of it, but what is it?" And she went, "Oh, well, you know, it's really..." And she said, "Well, there's a band playing at the Colston Hall in a couple of weeks' time." And I said, "Okay, will you be there?" And she said, "Yeah, I'll be there." I went, "All right, I'll see you there then." She went, "Okay." So anyway, a couple of days later, I'm in watching TV, and the Sex Pistols come on with Janet Street Porter. And it wasn't the Bill Grundy one, you know, the "you fucking dirty right." It weren't that one. It's John Rotten just goes, "Get off your ass." And they do this thing, and afterwards she interviews him, and he goes, "Oh yeah, it was fantastic." And he looked so bored, but they looked so great. And I was like, "I want to look like that now. I want some, whatever that is, I want some of that." And I remember turning to my brother, who was the intergalactic ultimate hippie, "Do whatever you want to." And I said, "Dave, if I came home looking like that, what would you say?" And he went, "I'll tell you to go and have a bath." I was like, "Right, okay." So I went to see this band a couple of weeks later, and it turned out to be a band called The Clash, supported by Richard Hell, I think, and the Voidoids. And I walked in, and I was literally knocked off my feet because there were these blokes on stage looking 20 feet tall. I mean, Paul Simonon. I mean, God, what a gorgeous fucking creature that was. You know, just like with his guitar banging it out, and I was like, fuck, you know, and it just got me. And it was like being back on the football terrace again, you know, that sort of... and I've got to fucking have some of this. And so I went back. I had 2 weeks holiday from the hospital, so I went back to Dagenham, my original place where I was born, with the idea of meeting up my old friends. We'd start a punk band. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But of course they were like girlfriends or they got married and all this, so I was like, right, okay. So I went over to this place called Dahl House, I used to stay, and met my old friend Benny Rambo. And he said, "What are you up to, Steve?" And I went, "Oh, I'm getting into punk rock." And he said, "Yeah, I've been listening to Patti Smith." And I was like, "Who?" And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "What are you thinking of doing?" I went, "I was thinking of starting a band." And he went, "Well, I'll play drums for you. I've got," and that's how that started. So yeah, and that's why my career ended in the hospital.
And you started as a drummer and a singer. There were only two of you, you and Ben. And then you got Andy in, or was it?
No, it was Steve Herman who came first. Yeah, for fuck's sake. Yeah.
The hippie style guy.
Huh?
Was it the guy who?
Yeah, he was the wrong person for the wrong thing. It was like, you know, I was thinking, right, let's start a punk band and we'll be like the Clash. You know, we'll all look smart with all these things. It's like, you know, Steve Herman walks in, this short, bald at that time, you know, bald bloke with a beard and all this sort of thing, and a rainbow jumper and Jesus creepers. And, oh, what are you doing, Penny? Oh, me and Steve are starting a band, and Penny's standing in front, Steve Herman's standing here, Penny's standing there, so Penny can see me, and I'm going... And he goes, Steve Herman goes, oh, well, I can play guitar. And Penny goes, well, why don't you come and join in? I'm like... The first recording we ever did, it sounded like Burt Whedon meets the Bay City Rollers. It was just awful. It was dreadful. You know, it's just... Ugh. So, yeah, humble beginnings.
But you managed to gather a band, and you have a first gig quite soon after that. And was in a yard in front of the squad. Would you please tell, because I was quite impressed how the Crass first gig was.
Well, it was a friend of ours who lived in London at the time. There were quite a few squats around, and they tend to be complete streets. So on one side, you would have people paying rent who could afford it. And we're talking central London, you know, millions now. But on the other side, it would be all squats, but just as well kept.
Yeah.
But people look different, and they're not paying rent. Well, fucking squat then, you twats. So we had this friend, Martin Lee, and he said, well, we're doing a festival. And you went through this doorway, and out the back was this huge playground, and that's where we played. That was our first gig. And it went on from there. So, but I have to say, recently I was in London, and I was like, oh, I've got 2 hours before my train leaves to go back to Norfolk, where I live. I'll walk round and see if it's still there. So I walked down Huntley Street, where one side used to be all the rich people, on this side was all the squats, and that's all rich now. And the house that I used to stay in with Martin Lee, that is now a solicitor's. Yeah, and the gate is locked. I could see through to the courtyard at the back. Of course. But now you've got to push buttons, and there was a security guard.
That's what happens when money talks.
Like, yeah, money talks. Who's that? Rubella Bello.
Yeah.
Money talk. Yeah.
But was it so that you only got a chance to play 2 or 3 songs with your
first gig,
because someone...
some old twat from over the road didn't like, and somebody came over and switched us off.
Probably didn't understand.
No, we were just like, all right then, you know, all we wanted to do was get drunk anyway, so it's like, oh, thanks, mate, now we haven't got to play no more. Who were the audience? Let's face it. 3 people walking around in big teddy bear outfits, you know, this is a punk, and children, you know, and someone juggling. Yeah, really punk rock, yes.
So, make a long story short, that's how Crass started.
That's how Crass started.
Yeah, so...
Like any other band.
Would you carry on a bit more about Crass?
You very soon found your own style. I mean, all this dressing in black, but also this way how you brought anarchism into punk. Anarchism as something more than just like chaos and destruction or some teenage rebellion. This was more like some serious thing for you. Yeah,
well, first of all, people think it's a myth and it's a joke, and it isn't. This is the absolute truth. Where we all lived at Dahl House, all the band together, we had one washing machine, which was a very old-fashioned thing. You put your washing in there, and when that was done, you put the water in there and drained it, and then you put your clothes in there, and that spinned it. So, but it was so old, you'd always getting electric shocks from it. Well, someone put something black in the wash, so all of the clothes came out black or grey, literally, and it's like, oh, fuck it, I can't afford to buy any more, so we all wore black. And that's why, literally. And I think that the anarchist thing came from that because we were dressed in black and the Crass symbol, people are used to it now, but when you first glimpse it, it's like, oh, is that a swastika? Is that a fascistic? It does look a bit sort of militaristic, even though it's meant to be like a chrysanthemum. So when we started, once we'd done Feeding the 5,000 and we got known, people would come to us from the right wing. Oh, we'd like you to do some gigs for it. No, we're not right wing, mate. Oh, well, you must be left wing then. no, we're not. And then we had the left wing come up. Oh, we'd like you to do something. No, we're not left. We're not communists, mate. Oh, you must be fucking right. You must be somewhere stuck in the middle now. Right, okay then. We'll be anarchists. Right, boom. Well, at that time, most people's idea of anarchism was some bloke with a beard throwing a bomb. You know, and all it's like, fucking hell, right, now we've got to have the fucking peace symbol up there to show that we're pacifists, not fucking... And it just went on and on and on, just endlessly describing what we were or what we weren't. So in the end, why did Crass have so many banners? I mean, it looked like a washing line in someone's garden, you know, it's just like to explain. So that's where it came from. But, you know, to us and to me, anarchism wasn't about chaos and disorder. It was about taking responsibility for your life. And this is going to sound very Christian, but, you know, treat people as you'd like to be treated. Because I'll tell you what, if you smack me round the mouth, I'll fucking smack you back, you bastard. You know, so it's that kind of fit, you know.
How does it feel now when you are looking back to those days, 40 plus years or something? And yes, but I can still remember that too, so don't whine about it. How does it feel when you notice that the impact of Crass has been so huge for the whole movement? I mean that you still see the covers of the records which are made exactly the same style as the records of Crass records were made. We are still wearing these badges. We are doing things, we are wearing black clothes, but we are respecting also anarchism, we are respecting DIY scene. We have that ethos that has started with something that Crass created on those early days of a punk rock. So how does it feel for you nowadays?
Incredibly humbling, and I don't understand it, because, you know, to be really awful about it, what the fuck do I know? All I was I was shouting down a microphone in a band.
Yeah.
I didn't know this was going to happen. You know, it wasn't designed, certainly wasn't.
I know.
You know, and it wasn't until the internet and all that sort of thing. And I first moved in Vieraana, that's 1990 hoo-ha.
Yeah.
And she had a computer.
Yeah.
And I went, oh, there's this thing called Wikipedia. I'll put in Steve Ignorant. Boom, fucking hell. So, and then I realised it had gone global.
Yeah.
So I think it was the social media that did it as well. But also I think because Crass we certainly weren't musicians. And what we were doing with if you can call it music, we were creating atmospheres. For example, when we'd be rehearsing, you know, Penny Rambo wouldn't say, oh, Phil, Free, can you turn your treble up on your head? Phil, can you make your guitar sound like it's stabbing someone? You know, so that's how we'd work with that. None of us were musicians, and I think that's why Crass can't be copied.
Yeah.
You know, because we who says that a song has to be 4 chorus, bridge, chorus? No, let's make it 27, then we'll have a little bit in there, and then we'll sort of do it. And who says women can't get up and shout and scream? You know, who says you can't have an opera singer in the middle of your set or whatever? So that's what we do all the time, pushing the boundaries. If punk is meant to be different, let's do it different, you know, and don't let's punk become this sort of rules and regulations.
Yeah.
You know, there's this unwritten punk rule book that exists somewhere. I've broken every fucking rule in it.
Thank God there isn't.
I know, but it would be huge. But yeah. Yep.
We have some samples here about the Crass Records releases, just to point out how the covers were and are. They are pretty much the same style, every of them. Even if it's a EP or LP or album or a poster, they have this specific style, which is even nowadays pretty much alive amongst the punk scene. So if you see something like that on the cover of a band, you know that probably it is an original anarcho-punk band from the 80s, or it is probably an anarcho-punk band that kind of looks back to those days with respect.
Yep, and also the reason we did that, just to interrupt you, I'm very sorry, was that so that in the old days of record stores, you'd flick through.
Yeah.
So the minute you saw that,
exactly,
you'd go, oh, that's a...
Yeah. You pick it up.
Yeah.
I did that.
But I mean, but leading on to what you were saying about, you know, how do I feel about, you know, what Crass have done and the thingy, and we were all wearing the symbol and all this sort of. I was in London a few weeks ago, and I was outside having a cigarette before the gig, and these two people came over wearing Crass t-shirts. Oh, are you Steve? I was like, yeah. Oh, can we stand? Yeah. Come on, photograph. Yeah, sure. And they said, oh, Steve, you know, it's very strange. Every time we wear this Crass t-shirt, people come and talk to us. And I was like, really? And they went, yeah. And I said, yeah, it's. And I think that's very strange because I was talking to someone earlier, just outside, and he said, you know, yeah, I get the same thing. And I said, it's almost like, you know, if you see someone wearing a symbol, you know they're going to be all right. Yeah. It's going to be okay. Yeah.
We are the same tribe. When you see you see the symbol, it's belonging to the same tribe.
Yeah.
It happens everywhere, wherever you go.
Bigger than Lidl's.
Yeah.
You inspired this so-called anarkopunk movement, British anarkopunk movement.
Yeah.
Was it a big surprise for you to see all those bands emerge, all those dirt, conflict, because of filth and so on?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that Crass, we were just doing Crass, what we felt, and then other people came along. You know, obviously we you know, do records with them and things, but it weren't us who said there was an anarcho-punk scene. That was put on us. Because I didn't know what the fucking anarcho-punk scene was. I'm not, you know, I just want to go to gigs and get a bit drunk, play some music and meet girls, you know, in those days. So I didn't, it was very odd, you know, that it was the bands that came after us almost. You know, it's like Crass get accused of, you know, telling people to not eat meat. Well, no, that's not us. I think we mentioned, you know, I think we made the comparison between the meat on the battlefield and the meat on the plate, but that's about it. It was bands like Conflict and Flux Begin who did that. It weren't us, but we get the blame, you know, or not the blame, but we get, oh, you did that. No, we didn't. It was people who came afterwards. And so, in a way, it got taken away from us. And this sort of myth has evolved where we did everything. No, we didn't. It was us with other people, without all of these, you know, other people in bands. We'd never have done it. You know, I mean, look, there's a band called Hagar the Womb. I don't know if you've heard of them, but I saw her a few years ago, and they were playing back in 1982. And I said to the lead singer, Ruth, and I said, Ruth, how old were you when you were playing in Hagar the Womb? And she went, I was 15 years old. And she was singing about women's rights and sexism and da-da-da. At 15 years old, fucking yes.
You took your role as Crass very seriously. You not just this image you had, but also staying very true, or trying to stay very true to your ideals all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It also became a burden.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because, you know, we'd turn up at a gig. Oh, you've got a van. Yeah, well, we've got to get it. Well, you could have used the train. Right, okay. Oh, you're drinking milk? Yeah. Oh, you're wearing leather? Yeah. You couldn't, you know, you couldn't win.
But you also tried to wrote back all the people who wrote letters to Dial House.
It was
something we wouldn't do.
It was incredibly important that as much as we could, we would stay true to our word. And of course, you're going to fail miserably because you can't do everything. But we did the best we could, and I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the fact that, no, I don't own a recording studio. No, I don't have a 750 water-cooled Suzuki motorbike, which I always wanted. No, I don't have that chip shop I always wanted to run. You know, no, I don't drive a car. I haven't got a speedboat. Have I got lots of money? No, I'm okay. What am I proud of? That the success of Crass was that the fact that you can come into any pub or cafe and you can get vegetarian or vegan food there. And we didn't do all of that, but I was a part of a movement that created that, and that is the success that you get. It's not money, it's not being on TV, it's not all the stuff I'm going to do tonight. That's all fan. Oh, Steve, you're wonderful. I know I am. I'm fucking brilliant. Fuck all that shit. No, the reality is that by doing things, things can happen. It takes fucking ages. But
that's something that should earn a good big hand. Because that's true. That's true. People are making changes. No one alone. So Crass became a burden in a way that you were so true for your ideals.
Yeah.
And then there were the day when Crass didn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
You were only 27, 28 at that time.
Yep.
Would you please describe us a bit about that era in your life or your life?
Well, the last... again, I have to dispel a myth that's going around. Thank you, Petty Rambo. But on the records, we always did a countdown, 621984, so till 1984.
Yeah.
And I remember having this conversation with Penny Rambo, and I said, Pen, what happens when we get to 1984? Do we go minus 1984? And he went, oh, we'll work something out, Steve. He's been saying since that it was prearranged that Crass would end in 1984. It's not true. I really remember that. But we did, the last gig we did was for a miners' benefit in Wales, over there. And coming out, all in the van going home, and all of a sudden Andy Palmer went, I want to leave the band. So there was this chorus of, oh no, Andy, don't, no, and then it all went quiet. And I think it was either me or Eve Libertine, about 20 minutes later, went, do you know what, if it hadn't been for you, Andy, it would have been me. Because once he had said it, I think everyone out of Crass sat there and went, thank fuck for that. It would have been 7 years of just non-stop, darkness. Yeah. We had a TV, but all we watched was the news, which at that time was the war in Ireland. Yeah. Eddie Ward was going, because it had to, you couldn't watch just soap operas, dark stuff. We backed at everything, the Falklands War had started, so it was all that, the miners' strike. It was a very dark. And we were running out of things to say. And it was getting more and more avant-garde, the music, like, Yes Sir, I Will. Yeah. And I was getting fed up with it. I don't like doing that. I still want to do the Clash, mate. And we backed ourselves in this dark corner. And it wasn't until, and I was like, do you know what? Brilliant, Crash is finished. I don't have to do that no more. And it was about a week later or something, I was on a bus. Driving through London, I saw these punks in the King's Road, all these bright Mohicans and things, and I was like, do you know what? I don't look like that no more. So I got off the bus, went to a second-hand shop, bought some new clothes, just looked totally different, combed my hair, which I did in those days, and I wore colours, and it felt very strange not to wear colours. I felt, even more nervous than when wearing black. So, it was a very strange thing. But, of course, 3 weeks later, there I was going to gigs and people would come up and say, didn't you used to be in that band called... Oh, fucking hell, yeah. And then, of course, I wanted to be in a band. Yeah. And I remember saying to certain members of Crass, do you fancy doing something else, but we'll call it something different? And they were like, no, Steve, we've done our thing. Ask Penny Rambo, do you want to... And he went, Steve, I've done my John Lennon bit. That's enough for me. And I was like... So for me, it was like the rug was like, there you go. Yeah. Because they all went off and did their own things, which they had. I mean, what qualification did I have? Screaming down a microphone for 7 years. So I got and get a job. Back to the supermarket where I fucking started off, stacking shelves. Well, it's I wouldn't mind doing that now, actually, but it was like, fucking hell. So for me, it was awful. I couldn't phone up Paul Weller. Well, mate, do you fancy doing a single together? I had nothing. I was lost, totally lost. And that's when depression set in. Yeah.
So how did you cope? What was the way that you find yourself a new kind of a start? After all, you will have to remember you were only 27 and you had a huge career back. And all of a sudden... Yeah, it's gone. As you said, nothing.
It's gone. Yeah, well, I suddenly remembered there were these things called pubs. So I started going there, and that's when the alcohol intake sort of came in. And
Public houses.
Huh?
Public houses.
Absolutely, and it was really nice and refreshing to be able to go down the pub and not have a really long, drawn-out, difficult conversation about, Steve, what do you think about the role of men in today's matriarchal society? And for fuck's sake, I could talk about, did you see the boxing last night? Yeah, fucking great, wasn't it? And it was so nice to do that again. But on the other hand, I'm like, I'm fed up with this now. It's boring. It's getting sexist. It's getting racist. I've gone right back round to square one, where I started from. I'm back in it and liking it.
Yeah.
And that was scary. And I was like, oh, fucking ain't doing that no more.
Yeah.
So I found that's when I joined Conflict. Started off. I was originally got to do a single with Conflict, but I ended up joining them. So did that, but it still weren't for me. So I did it for, and that's why. So.
But you were also shocked a little about the behavior of Colin in Conflict, weren't you?
Yeah, I don't know who isn't, but we were young.
Yes.
We were young.
Yeah.
Look, he's not here to defend himself, and I think it'd be wrong to.
No. That wasn't the purpose. But I meant that there were some kind of some things happens without you realizing it before you see it.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like it's like the Cockney Rejects.
Yeah.
Bless their hearts. Lovely people, absolutely lovely people. But they are of the thing of like when I grew up, like I did, and Colin. If you grow up, you've got to fight, and that's where it comes from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you don't run, stand there, because the minute you run, they're on you.
Yes.
You're running for your life. You're running for life.
Yeah.
So you've got to stand there and take it.
True.
Cool. I'm getting on West Ham now.
I'm getting a bit back to what we just discussed about the huge legacy of Crass. I met Arja yesterday, and I asked her a question about what would have happened if Crass never existed. Would there be such a DIY network, DIY punk network, global DIY network as there is today?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I doubt it. It wouldn't be the same, at least.
Well, it's the same thing as like, if Crass started next week, would it have the same impact? Because you can go onto the internet, because, that's the other thing about Crass, that we saw ourselves as an information bureau. In those days, there was no internet, no computers. So that's why we used to put names and addresses of if you get arrested or, campaign for nuclear disarmament, always on the back of the records, information. Well, now, all that information's, I'm doing this band, it's going to be about a thing called Etiquette. Yeah, I know, I Googled it, Steve. Oh, right, well, I'm doing this thing about nonsense. Yeah, I Googled it, Steve. Like, I've Googled it, fucking boring, go on, fuck off.
It's a big difference for the people who haven't lived the era when there were no internet. It was totally different era when you really couldn't search anything from the
You
computer.
had to go to libraries.
Yes, you came into the libraries.
Which is why we're here.
And you read books and magazines, and you wrote letters, and you talked to each other, and you went to the gigs, and you make the scene alive.
And you talk proper, like what I does, and didn't do and little signs and symbols. What the fuck is that? Yeah.
So that's why it's so different. The time was so different.
Yeah.
But you found the music again. Schwarzenegger, Stratford Mercenaries.
Yeah.
All that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Were there something wrong about mentioning them?
It's like when you're in bands, there's always a bit of an ego clash, and there certainly was in, Schwarzenegger. And
was it?
Yeah. I ain't going to mention names, but I was going, fucking hell, I didn't kill the cunt. Sorry.
Didn't Schwarzenegger end when you tried to beat up someone?
Yeah. Well, it just didn't stop. And I was trying to say, and just stop, don't keep that, and he kept doing it. And I was like, anyway. He hit my crumble button, I call it. And then Stratford Mercenaries, it just weren't working. I realised that it started off with good intentions, but I realised I was just being a vehicle for other people to do things. And that didn't feel right. And plus we were performing Crass songs, so that felt even worse. You know, it's embarrassing. And that's the other problem. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's the other problem with performing Crass songs, is that it has to be done professionally. You can't pretend. You can't. You know, I'll still have a laugh. You know, but it's got to be done with respect. Because there's a lot riding on it, you know. And, you know, Taro always says, you know, Steve, are your nerves okay? No, I'm fucking really nervous because I've got to do Crass tonight. Yeah. Fucking hell, I've got I've got that weight on my shoulders. Yeah. You know, you'll be brilliant, Steve. Yeah, right. Till I fucking swallow spit and go. But anyway, yeah, you see it later. Hopefully, hope you all lot come in. No.
Are you?
No, of course they're.
Yes, they are.
They're going up to read books.
Of course they are. You can't avoid it.
Yeah.
We are running out of time, but we have still a bit of a time left. So Arto, carry on, please, if you have something to ask.
In the beginning of Stratford Mercenaries, you said you wanted horns and keyboards and acoustic guitar. Later, with Slice of Life, was it when it kind of became finally true?
Yeah, it took me all that time, to find musicians, I suppose, or people that weren't just into punk. And the reason I always wanted to do something like Slice of Life, because way back when I was 11 years old or something, I saw a film called West Side Story, and the music just blew me away. And I didn't know at the time, but I know now that all my life I've been listening to stuff that reminds me of Bernstein's music. Hence, I got into things like Burt Bacharach, because it's violins and horns. And hence, I started listening to things like Joni Mitchell. Not Kind of Blue, because that's too sort of, just acoustic guitar, but certainly Quartered Spark, because she uses strings and orchestra on it. So with Slice of Life, that's what I'm gradually aiming towards. And so I've decided at the age of 65 that the next album that I bring out, and I don't know when it's going to be, it's going to take quite a while, but it's going to be called Music for My Pleasure. And it's going to be all sort of Burt Bacharach-y, cheesy, dreadful, your gran will like it, music that I've always wanted to do, and fuck it, why shouldn't I? Because I think I deserve it. That it? Finished there? Brilliant, because I'm gasping for a cigarette.
You can have your cigarette, but do you mind if we ask if the audience has something to ask you?
Right, okay.
Only 2 questions if they do have. Okay. Onko yleisöllä kysymyksiä? Nyt olisi 2 kysymykseen aika. Do they own us a living?
Of course they fucking do. That will never change.
What is the current situation of Dial House? Is Penny Rimbaud still living there?
Yeah, Penny Rambo and G live there all the time, but other people move in and out, that sort of thing. But it's those 2. But it still works on the open house thing. If you turn up, knock on the door. If someone's there, great. If not, put the kettle on and someone will turn up. It's yeah.
So thank you so much, Steve, for sharing these stories with us, and thank you for all of you for coming here to library tonight. Kiitos teille kaikille siellä ja täällä. Ja hei, tänään illalla sit klubilla Pelle ja Steve Ignorant. Tervetuloa, terve menoa.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for coming, yeah? Thank you.
Kiitos vielä Arja, Arto ja Steve. Ja hei, vielä tosiaan Arja sanoi, menkää klubille tai mennään. Sitten huomenna Helsinkikin voi mennä katselemaan tai kuuntelemaan totta kai. Tampere HC 8285, Harkkojen kultaiset nuoruusvuoret näyttely jatkuu koko toukokuun Kannattaa katsoa nyt, kannattaa tulla myöhemmin. Siellä on paljon semmoisia, jotka on herättänyt keskustelua. Ehkä täydennetään jotain nimiä tai muita. Ja muistakaa, että täällä on vielä tulossa 16.5. Tampere HC 8285 keskustelu. Hardcore-kysymyksiä hardcore-veteraaneille. Keskilöinä Arja, Juklars, Lasse, Riistetyt, Lättäkohu 63, haastattelija Jukkeli Nakari. Ja sitten 25. Vastavirta-klubilla Pastarst, Riistetyt, Sekadus, JHC 82. Tosi kovaa kamaa. Veikko, voitko soittaa vielä yhden biisin tähän loppuun, niin saadaan tää. Kiitoksia kaikille. Nähdään.